Hi everyone, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this next Off the Record panel. I'm Kit Carr, the project coordinator for Off the Record this year, and this is the Highway to Health, Mental and Physical Health in Music panel. And over the next 45 minutes, we'll aim to cover the common health issues affecting people working in music, how to preempt them, and how to maintain your mental health during the COVID pandemic, as well as providing advice on the support available and how to access it, and how to stay healthy on tour and in your work environment. A huge welcome to Adam, Feena and Pippa. It's great that you're able to join us today. How are you all doing?
Good, thank you.
Good, yeah, excited. Thanks for having us.
No problem. So to start, if you could all give us a quick roundup of what you do. Pippa, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. So my name's Pippa Wheble. I am a GP by trade, but I'm also a violin viola player and a singer. And I did a master's in performing arts medicine, which is a bit like being a sports medicine consultant, but for musicians, dancers, actors, singers, performing artists. And I work with an amazing charity called BAPAM, the British Association for Performing Arts Medicine, both as an educator and a teacher, but also as a clinician. So we provide free medical assessments for performing artists who are having health issues.
Great. Adam?
Hi, I'm Adam. Again, thanks for having me. It's nice to meet all you guys. I'm in a band called HYYTS, and before that I was a songwriter for film and TV. So my background's mostly in songwriting for other people and other projects, but by day, not since COVID, but by day I'm a music therapist as well. So I've worked in music therapy in all sorts of places for a wonderful company called Centre Stage in Kilmarnock, mostly in East Ayrshire. So in Kilmarnock prison once a week. For the weekly kind of choir and songwriting classes there, as well as dementia wards and all that kind of thing. So I've got a slight background in mental health and music as well.
Brilliant. And Feena?
Hiya, I'm Feena. Thanks so much for having me. I'm a DJ resident at Miss World at Sneaky Pete's in Edinburgh. I'm also the programming coordinator at EHFM online radio for Edinburgh. And I have a show on that station as well, based on music and mental health called Sound of Mind.
Brilliant. So obviously, this past year, the music landscape has greatly changed. What are the health effects that you've seen from the pandemic and people's altered ways of working? I'll go to Pippa first on this one.
I mean, the pandemic's been catastrophic for the music industry. It's had I think in general, we usually see many more physical injuries and vocal problems and hearing problems than we do mental health issues within the performing arts. But since the lockdown and the pandemic and the closing of many venues, we've seen a significant increase in mental health presentations. We're also seeing a lot of injuries related to computer use and relating to reduced actually not playing as much during the initial part of the lockdown, partly because they didn't have space to practice or just a change in priorities. But that lack of playing, we're now starting to see people developing injuries on returning to play because they're going back to doing what they were doing before and they've lost some of their muscle strength and conditioning.
Okay. And Adam, I know you're a musician yourself. Is this something that you've experienced, or?
Do you know what it actually is? And when you were saying that, I was like, that's exactly what happened to me. We tried to do the kind of live stream thing when it started, but realized quite quickly that wasn't really for us. But then we did a thing for Nordhoff Robbins for a charity recently where we had to do like a live performance, and it was the first time we played live in like, I guess 6 months or so. And I was so unfit. It was actually mental. Like my knees were sore. More just like my voice. I couldn't sing. I was like, I didn't realize how like unfit I'd gotten, how fit I was from gigging. You know what I mean? Like it's not a fitness that you necessarily realize you've got. It's like just more like you said, the body conditioning from it and like the stamina vocally, as well as like, because I run about when we play live, and I remember just being like in between songs, like I need to get fit if we're gonna start playing gigs again.
And Feena, I know you have your Sound of Mind show, and you've been interviewing people throughout lockdown, particularly about the mental health effects of the pandemic. Is it something that you've seen as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the main thing that I've had experience with, and like my peers having experience with, is more the mental health aspects of it. Like my life revolves a lot around nightlife and being sociable through that, because I also work in a bar part-time as well. So like a lot of my social life revolves around DJing and around music and around nightlife. So it kind of feels quite isolating, you know, going from that to then being at home a lot of the time. You're not seeing these people that you used to see, you know, on a regular basis. So the kind of, the isolation aspect, we're trying to do during lockdown, like a little series of Sound of Mind from Isolation, basically just getting like voices and music from like lots of different members of the musical community in Edinburgh, just to kind of try and combat that and just get back that feeling of community. And also the loss of income, you know, that's stressful. So I think that's really been affecting a lot of people's mental health, having to have that extra worry of, you know, where you're going to get rent next. So, you know, that's been difficult as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's been affected by it in some way. So from an overall perspective of the music industry and musicians, what are the health issues that are likely to kind of most commonly affect people working throughout the music industry? Pepper.
Oh, me. Okay. Yeah. So 75% of people who work in the music industry will have an injury at some point during their career. Now, so that's really common. That's 3 out of 4 people. The majority of those injuries will be physical. So they're often in the upper limb, neck and shoulder for musicians. Generally, they're around overuse or misuse. So just repeating and repeating and repeating the same action thousands of times, because that's what musicians are. We're experts of small muscle movements. So think of a drummer, you know, they do thousands and thousands of strikes of the same movement, even within one song. And they could play for 6-8 hours a day. And that repetition and overuse can cause inflammation and injuries. So physical injuries are very common. Vocal injuries are probably less common, but only because singers are a smaller group within all of the musicians. But vocal injuries, particularly overuse and tension within the voice, which again plays in with the mental health side of things, because when we are stressed and anxious, our voice is inside our body and it's being bathed in a whole load of hormones, and it's surrounded by a whole load of muscles that are completely reliant on you being able to take a big breath and relax those muscles in order for them to slide and work perfectly. So when we're stressed and a little bit of tension creeps in, that's when injuries can happen. Hearing issues increasingly are a problem for musicians, and there's a lot of resources available for that. And of course, mental health. You know, Feena mentioned it, that the isolation is a very big issue. Income is a very big issue at the moment. But actually, you know, as musicians, we are inherently creative people. And in order to be creative, you need to have the basic things of a safe roof over your head, and air and water and food. And you need to know that your income is there so that you can then reach that next level of really communicating and expressing yourself freely. And so I think a lot of musicians are really struggling at the moment with a loss of identity. You know, who am I if no one is listening? Who am I if I'm not performing? And those are some very big questions that we're helping people to work through and answer in some of our events at BAPAN.
Great. Feena, Adam, do you have any thoughts on this?
On you go, Feena.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I think coming from a nightlife perspective, I think just the health issues that can arise from having a lot of late nights, like that loss of routine. If you don't have a routine in place for dealing with all those late nights, I find, I know for myself, the first thing to go is eating properly, sleeping enough, making sure I'm being physically active, like just generally trying to take care of myself while also being up until 3 a.m. So yeah, and then also the things that come with nightlife, like alcohol consumption. You know, we can't pretend that isn't part of nightlife. So yeah, I think the issues that can arise with that's definitely something to look out for.
Yeah, definitely. It's the late nights and the altered schedule is a big one to deal with.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what are the signs that people should look out for in themselves, but also more importantly as well, their friends and their colleagues in terms of like a mental health aspect as well? Feena, come back to you.
Sure. So for me personally, a big sign is I start to become quite socially anxious. And that's, I used to find that really distressing and kind of upsetting that I was experiencing that, because being sociable is quite a big part of who I am. I get energy from other people. I enjoy being around people. So before I realized that that was a sign that I just needed to take it easy, or to slow down, or maybe just take stock of how I'm feeling. Before I realized that, I used to kind of, I used to find it quite distressing. But now I'm just more aware that that just means that I need to maybe take a break. When I start finding socializing quite difficult, I know I need to like have a few nights by myself. And also kind of finding things that I normally really enjoy doing, when I start finding them a chore, that's another indicator to me that my mental health isn't great. And then also, I guess, looking out for that in other people as well, people that you see out all the time. If you they haven't been out in a while, or suddenly they're going out a lot and you see them all the time and they're maybe overdoing it a bit, that's a huge indicator to me as well. And then maybe just checking in with them, seeing like what's going on, or even not being so direct about it, is like, oh, is there something wrong? But even just like making the effort to invite them for a coffee, or to just have a quick chat on Messenger, and just make them aware that you're thinking of them, and that they're valued.
Absolutely. Adam, is this something that you've had experience in?
Yeah, I guess so. I think Feena touched on it as well. I think when people start to stray from their usual habits when it comes to like natural things like eating or sleeping, and it's hard in the music business because it's quite often quite dysfunctional anyway. Like you say, like you might be up later than most people, you might have odd eating patterns because of that. So sometimes it's quite difficult to notice, but if you know the person well, you can usually see that it's like a difference from what they're usually like, as well as like either a disappearance or an overusage of like social media compared to what they used to be. Sometimes if like I see my friends are always active, that makes me sound like a mad stalker. But if I see someone that's usually doesn't use it a lot, is like active all the time, I'm like, I wonder why they're on that all the time. Or if they disappear and I've not heard from them for a couple of weeks, and I usually would. Like Feena said, I think the most important thing you can do is reach out, because it's not always the easiest thing to do. As people, I mean, I think most people go through that. Even if it's like no, I'm okay, thanks, but thanks for checking in. But a lot of the time you'll get like a response that actually warrants you having reached out.
Great. And from a physical perspective, what are the signs that you can look out for that something might not be quite right? Pepper.
Oh, okay, physical. I mean, so I really agree with everything that Feena and Adam have said. I think from a point of view of you know something's not right when your anxiety is increasing, your mood feels low, if you're having more negative thoughts, if your motivation's dropping, if your concentration is off. But equally, things like sleep, or being tearful, or just being a bit more reactive, or not being bothered about doing anything. These are all really important signs, and I completely agree. actually saying something to somebody could save their life. And I think that's a really important point to make from a mental health point of view, that, you know, saying to them, how are you? And when they say, oh, I'm fine, saying, it's just that I'm concerned about this. Is there anything I can do to help you? Because often people don't realize that they're in trouble, and they are so busy just holding it together, that actually having the opportunity to acknowledge, okay, this is something I need to do something about, it can change everything. So if you're not confident doing it, ask someone else to do it instead, but do make sure that you connect with people if you feel that they're struggling, if you're worried. From a physical point of view, pain is the first thing to be aware of. So if someone is experiencing pain when they're doing what they do, first of all, they should stop doing that. Now, I want to be clear, they shouldn't stop playing altogether, because as I said before, musicians, we build up strength and stamina in these fine muscles over time. And even having 2 weeks off is already going to reduce our stamina and reduce all of that strength and condition that we've created with all our practice. So pain, stiffness, sticking or discomfort in a movement, for the voice, if you have a loss of range, a change in the quality of your voice, or of course any pain, it's just really important to tell someone, whether it's a teacher or a doctor, tell someone that it's happening. Rest, and don't stop playing, just reduce your playing right down so that you're doing a good warm-up, just very gently moving through your range of play, so scales, vocal exercises, just gently easing into things, and then gradually you can build up again. But don't stop playing altogether unless you've got a throat infection, in which case you should stop singing and make sure you're staying really hydrated.
Okay. And in terms of where musicians do feel like there is a problem in terms of a more physical element, what's your advice on the next steps of getting help with that, Pepper?
Awesome. So this is what I do. So the first thing is, again, acknowledge that there's an issue. Don't worry about whether a lot of musicians immediately say, oh, well, it's because I did something wrong, or my technique is bad, or we worry about being judged, or we worry about losing a job. The most important thing is to acknowledge that it's happening and get some advice. Now, BAPAM have a load of really useful fact sheets on our website, which can give you some initial guidelines for what to do. But actually, in the first instance, if you're having a problem that's affecting your ability to play or perform or do what you do within the music industry, phone BAPAM and ask them for some advice. That is our bread and butter. That's what we do. So you can get specialist advice right there. Of course, there's your GP, and there are loads of mental health advice and support lines if you're having a mental health crisis and you need to talk to someone and BAPAM's office is closed.
Brilliant, thank you. So Feena touched on this previously, but we'll go into it a little bit more just now. What kind of things can exacerbate health problems, like lifestyle choices, personal habits, etc.? What can make health problems worse for musicians and people in the music industry? We'll go to Adam on this one first.
Wow, that's a big question. I think a lot of things. I think what Feena said is the most important thing from my experience, is like lifestyle choices. When we've been touring, for example, I mean, I'm very very posh these days, but it's more like hummus and carrot sticks and drugs and alcohol for us. Our band is very artisty, but I know a lot of bands that we tour with, for example, it's like every night, and then also I guess the partying and stuff like that. I mean, and after that, I know that a lot of people really have problems going on touring and off of touring, because it's like on tour is this amazing party where every night you feel like a rock star and people are singing your songs back to you, and then you go back to working in the restaurant or whatever, and so people, especially in COVID, when all of a sudden that's just gone, touring bands no longer have that experience. But I think that's an unhealthy way to live anyway. I think if you're having that level of dysfunctionality in your life where half of the time you're happy and half of the time you're not, you should be trying to be more balanced, as well as I just think like you say, it is an instrument. Even as that thing is like the voice, it is completely an instrument. A lot of people just treat it with, they'll drink or they'll smoke or whatever, which again, everyone's allowed to do what they want to do, but it can really affect your long-standing health.
Great. And Feena, do you want to expand a little bit more on kind of the nightlife aspect of it, and things that you've experienced or seen others experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like what Adam was saying, there's definitely like an element of drugs and alcohol are involved. Also found it interesting what you were saying. When you're on tour, there's that like disconnect between that high intensity, high emotional environment where you're on stage and whatever. I can kind of relate that to like a nightclub environment, and anyone who goes clubbing can relate to that. It's an amazing environment, and it's so brilliant for like self-expression and for catharsis, like loud music and dancing. It's brilliant, and it's a really euphoric experience. But that kind of like high intensity environment, I think, can lead to other temptations of wanting to progress that euphoria further, or not wanting that experience to end. And yeah, that can lead, I think, to temptations of substance abuse. And the up, always comes with the down, and I think a lot of people really struggle with that aspect of it. And I know that I do, and there's times where I've like really gotten it wrong, and there's like for a week afterwards I've been like, can't really see anyone or do much, and my mental health is all over the place, and my physical, I feel really bad in my body. And yeah, I think that's something that can really exacerbate your health, even if you're not already suffering from a mental health illness. And yeah, we can't pretend that isn't a big part of nightlife, that side of things. So I think it's just something to really be aware of, and to know your limits and your boundaries, and know yourself. And if you're like being aware, if you're in a certain kind of mental state that is going to be exacerbated if you make these choices, then just to take a step back and to have that awareness, and to try and make healthy choices for yourself. And then also not to beat yourself up if you do make those unhealthy choices, because everyone does it and it happens.
Great. So what advice do you all have from your varying backgrounds for people to the steps that they can take to maintain their health, good habits that people can try and put into practice to make themselves feel a little bit better, and not, maybe in terms of mental health, maybe not burn out and feel overwhelmed, and then in the physical sense, steps for maintaining their health in that sense as well. Pepper, you can start this one.
Thanks. Okay, so I mean, I think routine is really important, and as these guys have said, a large part of what we do within the music industry is actually very antisocial. We tour, we work late nights, evenings, weekends, and although we are in a social environment, we're actually often working. So it's really, really important, whether you are at home or on tour, that you build a routine of things that you do for yourself that maintain your resilience. So resilience is this fancy term everyone talks about, but it's essentially how capable you are to roll with the punches and get up and keep going if something bad happens. And so making sure that you sleep the same number of hours every night. And if you're touring, knowing for yourself, you know, actually, if I'm going to be sharing a room, I need earplugs, I need an eye mask, or if you're, you know, just being aware of how much sleep do I actually need in order to function well. Knowing what foods you like and making sure that you have those with you wherever you are, and eating regularly. Staying hydrated, and that's really important, particularly for singers, but actually for all of the performers, but particularly for singers. Alcohol is really dehydrating, and so is singing. So there's this really high risk time after a performance when you're in a loud environment. You might be doing interviews or talking to people, or you might just be having a nice time. But that's the time when a lot of vocal injuries happen, actually in that sweet spot. So being aware of when you're most at risk of injury, and just making sure that you're taking plenty of sips of fluid, steaming if you need to, and that you're really resting your instrument between times. Regular exercise, a good diet, ideally a good practice in terms of whether you do yoga or meditation or whether you walk, it doesn't matter, but having something that you do routinely for yourself is key. The other thing I really want to mention is, so two of the big issues that actually make health issues, mental and physical health issues, worse is a fear of negative feedback, a fear of losing your job, and a fear of being, a fear of asking for help. But I think social media is a really big issue. And when we are working and touring, one of the biggest stresses a lot of people experience is instability in their relationships. So the world's great, it's got really small and we're able to connect with people, but actually turning off your social media and taking a break is also a really important factor for you in terms of feeling like you're living your life now, not just through Facebook or Twitter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, well, I think Pippa's totally spot on, to be honest. It's great to be with you guys. You guys are like, just, you know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, I think that's it. I think listening to yourself is a hard thing to do and a really important thing to do. Like, as well as it took me years to, like, what Pippa was just talking about. If you know you're going to be in a specific environment, like almost safeguard yourself for that. Like, if you know you're going to have trouble sleeping, then take precautions for that. And same with eating and making sure that you have enough rest and things like that. I think it's quite difficult to work that out. Well, it was for me anyway. Like, I think a lot of people are quite critical thinkers, but I think as musicians tend to be more creative types. And I think actually just asking yourself how you feel, how that thing made you feel that happened in the past, working through it and trying to make precautions for the future, as well as the most important thing that I tell the people that I work with that go through real bad mental health spots is, I think one of the hardest things to do, but if you can crack it, is the best thing to do, is trying to break the negative thought cycle. So if you wake up and you feel like it's going to be a bad day for whatever reason, not making that thought make it a bad day, because, you know, and trying to find a way. And there's loads of great things online, as well as, I think usually you're going to have to find things that work for you best. But whether it is exercise or some meditation or yoga or things like that tend to work for people, or just a repetition of positive reinforcement to yourself, that I think it's very easy to enter a negative thought cycle, especially when it's like being mean to yourself, being hard on yourself. Feena touched on it earlier as well. There's been times we've made mistakes in gigs, for example, that have lived with me for years, literal years. Like when I'm lying in bed at like 4 a.m, I wake up thinking about that one thing I did wrong. So I think like finding a way to break that cycle, because it can just be so repetitive and really get you down. And as I said, there's loads of ways to do that. CBT, things like that, as well as counselling, reaching out to friends can sometimes do that as well. All the things we touched on, I think, are really good for that.
Perfect. And Feena, what are your experiences with making good choices and practicing kind of better lifestyle choices?
Yeah, I mean, Pippa and Adam have put it brilliantly. To expand slightly, I've found mindfulness to be really helpful. I know that that's mindfulness and yoga and meditation, I feel like are very much these kind of wellness tropes that people say that they're having a bad time. It's like, oh, have you tried doing yoga though? but really mindfulness, I mean, it is, as Adam was saying, it really is just like being aware of how you're feeling and being aware of your thoughts and just checking in with yourself and making choices based on those observations about yourself. I think also maintaining connections to people that you know through music. Although there are these like unhealthy aspects of being involved in the music industry and being involved in nightlife, there's also these aspects of it that are, I think, are really special and really promote like such a feeling of well-being and of fulfillment. And I think a huge part of that is the community involved in it. And so just trying to maintain that, community, to maintain those connections, even if it is just somebody that you just see on the dance floor every so often. Just, I don't know, yeah, send them a wee message and seeing how they are, and just trying to maintain those connections that we really value. I think that's really important, and utilizing those connections, absolutely. And I found one thing to be quite helpful in like setting boundaries for myself as well. Obviously, sometimes they get broken, but having them there is, I think, really essential. For example, like, okay, I've got a couple of gigs this week and I know that I'm going to have a late night that night because I'm working, and then also going to a friend's gig that night. So that week's going to be really busy. The week after, I'm not going to plan anything. I'm going to just have that to myself and I'm going to rest up. And yeah, having those guidelines for yourself there, I think is helpful.
Great, thank you. So are there any particular organizations, services, websites, resources that you would recommend for people looking for advice and help? I know, Pippa, you've already discussed some of the elements of BAPAM, but feel free to go into way more detail about what BAPAM does and the resources that are available to everyone.
Awesome, thank you. So as I said, BAPAM's a charity. It's the British Association for Performing Arts Medicine. They have loads of resources on their website. So they have fact sheets. But they also have a whole section of resources. I think Shannon was going to post the resources into the chat for you. But they have fact sheets on warm-ups, simple warm-ups that you can do that can prevent injury. They have lists of charities and organizations that can help with mental health crises. They have Fit to Sing, Fit to Play, all sorts of really useful resources there. The one I want to mention is the Healthy Practice Diary. So this has a checklist of all of the things that you might want to do or that you might not be doing that can or could improve your health, mental health and physical health. So it started out as a healthy touring checklist of things you might want to think about before you go on tour. And it's equally useful in terms of your general physical health and mental well-being. So if you download that off the resources page, you can go through that checklist. And even if you just pick one thing that you want to focus on, set a goal, create a boundary. One of the first ones I did when the lockdown started was that I was going to leave my house 4 times a week to go for a walk. That's realistic. There's no time limits on how long I walk for, just that I get out of my house and I see the sun and I breathe fresh air. Simple goals like that improve your well-being are gold dust. So check that out. But BAPAM also has clinics. So you can see a physiotherapist, a doctor, any number of different specialists who work with people within the performing arts industry. And you can come and see someone like me, a GP, but you get a 45-minute completely free assessment to talk about what the problem is, how it's impacting you, and make a plan for how we can sort that out. Don't ever let money be an issue about getting therapy or getting an investigation done, because BAPAM has relationships with all of the music charities, and we can support people to make sure that they can fund any treatment that they need. BAPAM also has excellent webinars. So if you want to know more about vocal health, mental health, or injury prevention for musicians, every month these webinars happen. They're 2 hours long. They're free to attend, and they're done by a different speaker every month. So you can attend them for a year and learn loads and loads of really cool new stuff that's helpful. The last thing I want to mention is that since the lockdown started, BAPAM have been running a community drop-in. So that's a weekly session on a Tuesday afternoon, which I lead, and it's essentially a community space. So we come together, we share, we do a mindfulness exercise of some sort, and then we have a guest speaker. So this week we had someone come in to talk about stretching, but specifically tension release in the neck and shoulders. That was really nice. We do a whole load of different exercises, learn new skills, explore how those things could be useful to us. But essentially, it's a community space for like-minded musicians to talk about how they are. So that's a really nice resource.
Amazing. We'll make sure that all the links to these are available to all of our attendees on this panel, because there's a lot of different things there that people can benefit from. Feena, what organizations and services and resources would you like to highlight?
I would really like to highlight in particular Crew 2000 on Coburn Street. I think they do a lot of really cool work. I spoke to one woman who works there, Kira, for my show Sound of Mind, and she was just so lovely, so insightful, so knowledgeable. They do a lot of work to do with harm reduction. So they do, there's two elements to that. One is the outreach. So they go to clubs with information on harm reduction, to do like with sexual health and also with drug use. And they also run a drop-in as well. And I'm pretty sure that's still running even during COVID. I think you can just drop into the shop. But check out their Instagram, because I think they have all the information on there. And they also have counselling resources as well, and everything is free. So that's definitely one organisation that I think is really great and definitely you can utilise. The other would be Help Musicians Scotland is a website with loads of really good resources to do with mental health. And I mean, I've got it bookmarked. I think that's a nice idea to just like check it out if you have time just now, and then maybe just bookmark it for another time when, for your future self, if maybe you're having a difficult time and you just need somewhere to go that has all the resources just listed there. Yeah.
Great. Adam, any organizations?
Yeah, my resources are a little bit more kind of music therapy sided, but I guess first of all, Nordoff Robbins is a wonderful charity. They tend to focus more on like hospice work, as well as using music to work with children with developmental or learning difficulties. But they're worth mentioning because they're amazing, as well as a wonderful little place in Glasgow called Vox Luminous. Again, they mostly work with people that have maybe been in the prison system or have been victims of violent crimes. But they do run drop-in centres as well, and they have amazing musicians like some of the best musicians in Glasgow go there to like help out and write songs with people. And I did a little bit of work there, and it was a wonderful place. So that's definitely one as well as Centre Stage, the company that I work for. It's in Kilmarnock, so it's a little bit out of Glasgow, but it's run by an amazing person called Fiona McKenzie, who was a school teacher for years and now devotes her life to using music to help people. So it's a drop-in centre. You can go there. They have choirs geared towards all different age groups. people from like babies go up to like 90 years old, so they have different specialized things, but you can always just drop in for a cup of tea, and it's pay as you see fit, as well as they work really closely with moral food support. So a lot of people that find it difficult to maybe reach out and say I'm having trouble putting food on the table, they do a lot with around Christmas time as well, which can also affect the mental health. And there's everyone just goes and has a big sing, and it's amazing. It's still going, as well as they do loads of stuff online now, so you can check out the social medias. So yeah, that's centre stage.
Amazing. So I'm conscious that we are edging ever so closer to the end of the panel. We can touch on this just now, just in case anyone has experienced this. Have you ever been in a situation where talking about health issues has been discouraged? And do you feel that there are particular misconceptions about mental illness and creatives in the music industry? We'll go with Feena first on this one.
Cool, thanks. I'll just be brief. Regarding if I've ever experienced not being able to be open about health, to be honest, no. I have been really lucky in the people that I know, people who I've surrounded myself with in music are all just really nice, sound people. They all understand. They are very nurturing and really kind, and I don't think it would ever be an issue if I ever had to cancel something or postpone something because of physical or mental health issues. I don't think that would ever be an issue, so I'm really lucky. Regarding misconceptions with mental illness and creative people, I think it's seen maybe as something that creative people just deal with and get inspiration from. Whereas for me, I find the opposite. I find being mentally unwell really stunts my creativity, and it fills me with like thoughts of like self-doubt, which is really not conducive when you're trying to be creative or to put yourself out there. And I think for DJs in particular, I think if you're a touring DJ, I think there's a conception of maybe just being able to keep going and having night after night of gigs and traveling and planes and not having to have a break and just being able to tolerate that, even though, you know, like everyone's human, and that's not really it's not a healthy way to live, and it's not conducive to good mental or physical health. But I think that's less of a stigma now, and I think it's less of a misconception now. I think people are a lot more aware of mental illness and of people's mental and physical needs.
Yeah, definitely. Adam, do you have anything else to add with that?
No, I don't. I think Feena nailed it.
Brilliant. And we'll finish with Pippa on this question.
Personally, no, because I'm very vocal when things are not good. But I've had a lot of experiences where I've been playing and I just haven't had enough space, and that's led to an injury. I think much more. I think there's been a big shift in the industry in recent years. I think that there's been a big shift in our world around talking about mental health, and I am a huge advocate for that. We need to talk about it, because that's half the battle, just acknowledging that there's an issue. I still do see quite a lot of performing artists who have left a job because they were having a problem and they didn't feel safe to speak out about it. There's a lot of people who are not returning to work right now because they're afraid about COVID and they're not confident having those conversations about what they need in order to feel safe. I think that's really sad, because the industry as a whole, we have standards, we have guidelines, there's loads of information out there. And if anyone's struggling with anything like that, I just encourage you to look at Help Musicians, look at Musicians Union, look at BAPAM, get some information and just ask.
Brilliant. I think that's a great note to end on. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our brilliant panelists, Adam, Feena and Pippa.